The Tennis Gambling Podcast and the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Onyx Fantasy. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to get 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. First episode of 2 for today on Saturday, January 11th. It's roughly 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again, going solo for this pod. Time for a big episode, one of the biggest episodes of the year. It is time to get into the Australian Open. So we're going to be doing one episode for the men's side. Then we're going to do another episode for the women's side. Probably going to go back to back, maybe a little bit of a break in between. But point is, we're going to have 2 episodes this morning getting into the actual Grand Slam tournament, the first one of the year. Before we do that, though, I do want to recap what happened in Adelaide and in Auckland for the last episode and just for the overall title matches in those 2 events. So before we actually get into the Australian Open with the quarter picks, etc., want to recap the lock and dog. Overall, a great episode for us. In fact, could not have gone any better. For the lock, ended up winning. We had Monfils minus 1.5 games at minus 135, destroyed Bergs. It was the way I thought the match would actually go. Bergs is still a solid player, but he does commit a lot of unforced errors, and Monfils did a great job of actually keeping the ball in play, forcing Bergs to actually hit the ball past him, and he couldn't do it. Bergs just punted away too many free points, and Monfils won comfortably in straight sets. For the dog, nice win there too. Never in doubt, had Felix and Korda over 2.5 sets of plus 125, as you ended up seeing alternating 6-3s, and then Felix did eventually win 6-1 in the final set. But either way, 2 very easy lock and dog winners. Our third sweep in the last 4 episodes. The picks have been good. On top of that, though, the main reason why it was a great episode, we ended up cashing an outright, a big one. We had Monfils to win Auckland at 16-1. Felt good. In fact, Monfils, once again, after the, I'd say, comeback he had against Martinez in the first match, he was dominant. In fact, he did not drop a set after the first set against Martinez, so he really just rolled through the competition. 16-1, though, feels good. He also set history in the process, as Monfils became the oldest man to win a tour-level singles title since 1977. So once again, Monfils proven that age is just a number at this point, as he still has some game left in him. We'll see how he does in the Australian Open as he takes on Perricard in the first round. Point is, though, Monfils did us a solid twice. Not only did we win the outright, but we doubled down on him in the final against Bergs, and he got the job done for us both times. So 16-1. Feels good to cash a relatively big outright to, I'd say, start the season, and hopefully that carries over into the Australian Open. So once again, ended up winning the outright there with Monfils, swept the lock and dog picks, can't complain. Now for the other matchup, which once again we did win on for the actual over 2.5 sets, Felix did beat Korda in 3. Weird match in general, pretty streaky, but then again, you have 2 head cases like Felix and Korda going back and forth, not a total shock that there was a lot of, I'd say a lot of overall momentum swings over the course of the matchup. Korda, though, just looked a little bit out of sorts. I know it was his first tournament back since the elbow surgery, so we'll see how he looks moving forward. Felix, though, nice title win. I can't say he looked great in all those matches, but he was able to outlast the opposition in those matches, as he ended up outlasting Paul and Korda in 3 sets in each of the last 2 rounds. Overall, good for him. Do I think that's going to result in a massive run in the Australian Open? No. But either way, a title's a title. Good for Felix. We'll see if he can build on that confidence-wise for the rest of 2025. Anyway, before we get into the actual preview of the Australian Open, do want to remind you once again, you can show support for the show by subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you can also find the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So if you're on there, please leave a rating and a review. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch, sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs, all high quality, all affordable, different colors as well. So different options for you, not just for the tennis show, but also for other shows, the network, the NBA show, the MLB show, the college experience. You get the drill. Point is, a lot of shows have merchandise and they're all cheap. So once again, you can definitely find yourself something on the merch store when you check it out. Plus, a reminder, the playoffs actually start today in the NFL. So if you want to check out some actual NFL picks, make sure to tune into the Sports Game Podcast for all of your NFL picks and props. So time to get into the actual preview on the men's side for the Australian Open. Once again, the actual format of how we're going to do the breakdown. We're going to go through the quarters first, then we'll go through the outrights of the actual winning of the event, and then we'll get into the lock and dog picks at the end of the show, like always. So for starters, got to mention the recent winners, which does feature a lot of Djokovic, full disclosure there. Last year, Sinner beat Medvedev, came back from 2 sets down, 1-5. Joker beat Tsitsipas, then you saw Nadal beat Medvedev in that crazy comeback. Joker beat Medvedev the year prior. Joker beat Thiem, and Joker beat Nadal. Djokovic has won this event, let's just say, quite frequently. Now, the problem is for Joker, he has not won an ATP title in over a year. He won the gold medal in the Olympics, which does not count. That is not an ATP event. So once again, it has been over a year since he has won a title, which is very, very, I'd say, just weird to think about because he's been so dominant for so long as the best player of all time that he just has not been able to actually get over the finish line on an ATP tournament or in an ATP tournament over the last couple of years. So it does feel a bit weird, but the point is it does seem like Joker either is going to figure it out soon and he's overdue for a win, or he's going to keep potentially losing and being overvalued in the markets who keep pricing him like a serious contender when he is not. Now, for the actual history of the event, Joker has won it 10 times, so keep that in mind. But Sinner has been an absolute freight train, especially on hard court over the last year. So he's been borderline unbeatable on hard court lately. We'll see if anyone can dethrone him or if he'll be able to repeat as champion. Starting off with the actual first quarter in the event. This is the Sinner quarter, so keep that in mind. So for the actual first quarter odds, shop around. By the way, a lot of books had I'd say had the markets available. So once again, just to read off the actual books I used for the actual, I'd say, line shopping. I used FanDuel, I used DraftKings, I used BetMGM, I used Caesars, and I used BetRivers. So once again, the prices I'm going to mention are the best prices that I found in any of those 5 books. So keep that in mind. I did all the line shopping so you don't have to. Starting off with Sinner, he's minus 280. By the way, we're going to use the DraftKings lines here for this episode to read off. But once again, shop around, try to find the best price you can. Sinner's a minus 280. You have de Minaur at 9-1 as the home country guy. Rune is 14-1. Tsitsipas 14-1. Hurkacz 20-1. Berrettini 22-1. Khachanov 28-1. Mickelson is 40-1. You have Kecmanovic at 50-1. Cerundolo at 50-1. To be honest, there are more names to mention. I'm not going to bother because you have Sinner here, and I'm not going to waste anybody's time. So obviously, I think Sinner's going to win the quarter. I really have a hard time going against him. He's an absolute machine, especially on hard court, and I do think he's going to roll throughout the entire quarter. So yes, I do think Sinner's going to win. However, I do have a rule on the show. If it's anything above basically minus 170 or minus 180, I'm not going to give it out. Occasionally minus 200. I'm not going to encourage you to bet minus 275 on a quarter. I think he's going to win the quarter. If you want to throw it in a parlay, maybe. But the point is, I'm not going to give this out. I think he's going to win the quarter, so keep that in mind. But I do have one other name as a long shot flyer that I'm going to at least mention. But I think Sinner realistically is going to win the quarter. So once again, my actual long shot here is going to be Khachanov at 30-1, who's been successful in Australia in the past, made the semis a couple of years ago. So I know that he has the overall capabilities of making a deep run in Grand Slam. Kind of his thing, where he's made the semis in the U.S. Open. He's made the semis in Australia. Point is, you can always count on him to make a respectable run, and I do think his path is actually not that bad for a guy that can maybe make a potentially surprising deep run in this one to some, but his overall section immediately is not that bad. He has Manarino in the first round, who's been kind of a mess for the last year or so. Should be interesting. I think Khachanov should win, though. Then Diallo or Nardi. Probably Diallo. I think he's better than him. You're looking at potentially Tsitsipas in the next round. I will admit Tsitsipas has done well against him in the past, but I do think Tsitsipas is still a head case. We saw him lose in the United Cup, and I do think that he is a guy that is still untrustworthy. I think Khachanav's overall, I'd say, section there in the quarter is very doable, and then you would have to face off against de Minaur potentially in the next matchup. So I do like the fact Khachanov has a potential path to avoid Sinner until the quarterfinals. So I do like the idea that Khachanov can be the guy that maybe faces off against Sinner in the quarters. He might end up losing. He's probably going to lose if that's the matchup. But 30-1 for a guy that I think has a pretty solid path and a guy that's been very good in Grand Slams before of actually reaching the semis in general, I think 30-1 is a good price. That's kind of my long shot there. Once again, I think Sinner's going to win the quarter, so I didn't bother going for a cheaper guy like de Minaur at 9-1. I'm not picking de Minaur to beat Sinner. Sinner beats him every time. Rune, I don't trust either. Tsitsipas, I can't trust. You get my point. There are just too many guys I can't trust in the section. Hurkacz, I think, has some talent, and we've seen him make some runs in Grand Slams before, at least some somewhat respectable runs. But the point is, he's still a little bit too volatile for me, and I think Sinner would beat him anyway. So once again, give me a long shot here at 30-1 as my long shot pick, but Sinner should get the job done in this quarter. Moving on to the second quarter in this event. This is the Medvedev quarter, a lot more open. So Sinner was minus about 280. Medvedev here is favored at plus 240. Now, Fritz is 3-1. Perricard's 9-1. Shelton is 9-1. Rublev is 10-1. Fonseca, who in the qualifying, by the way, is 11-1. He faced off against Rublev in the first round. Probably the most entertaining match of the first round. So that's a pretty weird overall pricing for Rublev and Fonseca when they're both against each other and they're separated by about, once again, $1. So you have Tiafoe at 14-1, Musetti at 20-1, Chapo at 25-1, Monfils, fresh off the title at 30-1. You have Papiron at 30-1 at the home country guy, Morozin 40-1. You kind of get the point. So for the actual quarter, I got to mention the guys I'm tossing out because I have to toss out a lot of guys that are towards the top, but not the favorites in the quarter. Perricard I can't take because he is against Monfils in the first round. Really not an easy draw for both guys. I know Perricard looked good in the couple of events he played in recently, and we saw him lose in a pretty interesting matchup to Opelka there. Point is, though, I do think that Perricard is definitely dangerous. Am I picking him to make a deep run to the semis? I am not. I think Monfils in the first round is very difficult. Monfils, I think, actually can pose some potential problems for Perricard, and I think that Monfils can pull off the upset. So once again, I'm not going to pick Perricard if he might be on upset alert in the first round. Same argument I have for Rublev and Fonseca. Can't take either guy when you're against each other in the first round, and what should be in a war, I can't pick it to win the quarter when you have a decent chance of losing in the first round. So I can't go with those guys. Shelton has a weird matchup too, as he takes on Nakashima in the first round, which is definitely not easy either. So once again, you have a lot of guys who are kind of around Medvedev and Fritz who have really tough matchups in the first round. So for that reason, I can't actually go with any of these guys because I think that if I'm picking one guy to make a deep run, I need at least a decent path for the first round or two. I don't even have that in this. So I'm going to go with the basic chalk here for the second quarter. I'll go with Medvedev, who's made the final here multiple times, and I do think that he has the game to once again have a respectable showing here. Medvedev has made the final 3 times in the last 4 years, so he tends to make very deep runs. He doesn't win, but he doesn't need to win. All he has to do is make it to the semis. For this to cash, give me the plus 250, and I am going to go with Fritz at 3-1. Had a great year last year, made the U.S. Open final. His confidence is through the roof, and I do think you're looking at a guy who, based on the draw, should make a decent run here too. Has Brooksby in the first round, who's fresh off the suspension. Then he has Coric or Green. He could take on Perricard potentially in the third round, but I think he'd be favored over Perricard. I think that once again, you're looking at Monfils maybe upsetting Perricard in the first round. I think that Fritz, though, is a good draw for the first 2 rounds, and I do think that he can definitely get the job done. He'd be favored against Musetti as well if he got past Perricard or Shelton. So I like the overall draw for Fritz, at least for this price. Medvedev's draw, though, is an absolute joke, so that's why I am going to go with him besides his history and the fact that he's been a finalist in 3 of the last 4 iterations of the event. Has a wild card in the first round, which will definitely dominate. Then either Tien or Ugo Carabelli. He'll be a massive favorite in that one. Then either Papiron, Mutet, Hijikata, or Kruger should be a massive favorite in that one too. Then maybe Tiafoe or Rublev. Rublev could lose to Fonseca. Point is, Medvedev might coast into the quarters of this actual quarter. So once again, I think that 250 is a good price. I go with both guys here as my picks for the second quarter. Before we get into the actual third and fourth quarters for the event, I want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings because the playoffs are here. Talk about the playoffs. Yes, we are. Get in on the action for the NFL playoffs on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. A reminder that scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the playoffs, and you could actually score big by betting on them by DraftKings. The number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try something as simple as betting on a touchdown. And once again, go to DraftKings Sportsbook to make your picks either on the app or even on the website if you want to do it through your computer. Reminder that when you do make a new account, new customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use SGPN as your code. Code SGP, not SGPN. Code SGP for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use just $5 of wagering. A reminder, only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished going through the first two quarters in the Australian Open. Time to move on into the third quarter. So for the actual third quarter, this is going to be the most drama-filled one because there's a highly anticipated matchup in the quarterfinals. This is the Alcaraz quarter, but not just the Alcaraz quarter. It's the Alcaraz and Joker quarter. They are in the same section, which is going to make for a very fascinating quarterfinal matchup if we end up getting it in about a week or two. So for the actual odds here, Alcaraz the favorite at -105, Joker's +130 with Andy Murray in his coaching booth for this one. You have Draper at 12-1, you have Dimitrov at 14-1, Court at 22-1, fresh off the final appearance there. You have Monkic at 25-1, Leheshka 25-1, Opelka at 28-1. You have Basaveretti at 30-1, Kokkinakis at 50-1. To be honest, you kind of get the point. I'm not going to go past the first couple guys into this quarter. Now, I am going to point out the quarter is actually very deep. Draper can be dangerous. Dimitrov can be dangerous. Korda can be. Monkic can be dangerous too. Beat Alcaraz last year. And even Opelka beat Djokovic about a week or two ago. So you can definitely expect a little bit of drama here. And I'll put it this way. If we did not get Alcaraz a Joker in the quarters, I would not be as shocked as other people might be. There's a lot of talent in this quarter. So just keep that in mind. Now, the problem is, can I realistically pick a long shot to beat Alcaraz and Joker potentially? I really can't. So even though I am giving flowers to some of the other guys in this quarter, Draper, who's had durability issues over the years, so that's a bit of a concern there. Dimitrov, who has been good over the last year or so, but he also retired in his last tournament, so I do wonder how healthy he is for this one. You're looking at Korda, who just made a final, who has once again barely played in matches post-elbow surgery. Don't think he'll have the actual stamina and durability to make a deep, deep run in this event, so I'm not going to go with Korda either. Monkic is interesting at 25-1. Didn't pick him, though, and Leheshka's kind of in the same boat. I do think he's interesting. He's very talented. Won a title this year already, but I'm not going to go with him either. Opelka, I don't think is good enough to actually be a serve bot and to actually make a very deep run, and he withdrew from his last event with a back injury, so I can't really take him either. I'm going chalk here. I'm going to go Alcaraz and Joker. I did find Alcaraz at +110, and I found Joker at +180. 180, I think, was on FanDuel, which was very, very rogue for pricing. Compared to other books, once again, most books had 130, 140. FanDuel had 180. So I just said thank you, and I took the 180. So I'll go with the two favorites here. Think the draw is going to be interesting for both guys. Joker's draw is not easy. He does have Basaveretti in the first round, who I think he'll beat. Basaveretti's good. I think that could be a match where Joker maybe even drops a set, but eventually does win. He might face Monkic, though, in the third round, but Monkic would have to beat Opelka first. So really not a great draw for Opelka. As a qualifier in the first round, but Monkic in the second round and Joker in the third is not what you want to see for Opelka. But Joker, I do think, should get by. It might be difficult. He might drop some sets. So keep that in mind, but I'm going to go with the chalk here for the third quarter. Moving on to the final quarter. This is what I think the most open quarter of the entire tournament. So this is the Zverev quarter. However, reminder, Zverev did get injured, actually, in the United Cup and had to drop out. So he ended up suffering a bicep injury, which is usually going to keep somebody out for a couple weeks. However, he didn't have that actual time to sit and rest because he only got about a week off or so. So once again, Zverev might be rushing back with an injury that usually takes a couple weeks. So I don't exactly trust his overall, I'd say, fitness level at this point. So that's why I think it's going to be a massive opportunity for you to find a long shot to actually back that maybe can actually make a run here as Zverev either loses early or even withdraws from the event at some point. So for the actual odds here, Zverev's +120. Ruud is 9-1. You have Fees at 9-1 as well. Paul's 9-1. Felix, fresh off the titles, 12-1. Umber's 14-1. Mensik 16-1. Kyrgios is 16-1. Shout out to Kyrgios, who's back in action. He's also injured, but we'll see how long he can potentially go. He had an abdomen injury over the last week. You have Tabilo at about 18-1. You have Nishikori at 25-1. Shang's 25-1, and you kind of get the point from there. So Zverev, I said before, I can't take. I don't see any value. I know he made a respectable run last year, beat Alcaraz last year, was up 2 sets against Medvedev in the semis and choked. But with his injury to the bicep, I can't trust his overall fitness, and I think the price is definitely off for a guy that has really not had much time to rehab and recover the injury. So I don't see any value on Zverev. I think it's actually a very bad price when you factor in the context. So I'll pass on Zverev. Now, this is where the price shopping is very important. Said before, DraftKings had Ruud at 9-1. I was going to skip Ruud because I can't stand him. I think that he is a pretty decent underachiever, except when he's on actual clay. However, the price was too good shopping around. I found 16-1 on Bet Rivers, which is an absolute bargain. I know Ruud's a head case, and I know that he tends to fall short, especially in Australia, as he lost to Norrie last year in 4 sets. The point is, though, I do think it's a good draw for him, or at least a manageable draw, in what should be a very open quarter. Munar in the first round, Mensik in the second round, which could be tricky, but I do think he can get the job done there as a favorite. You have Felix potentially in the third round, but Felix is in the same immediate section as Struff in the first round, not easy, and Chang in the second round. So not a great draw for Felix. So once again, Ruud has a pretty decent path, if you factor that in, to what could be maybe a potential round of 16 appearance. And then you have to face off against Paul. They've had a couple marathons over the years. I think you're looking at a pretty decent path for 16-1 for a top 10 guy in the world. I get Ruud in Australia has not been very good in the past. I understand. He made a U.S. Open final a couple years ago during COVID. The point is, I think 16-1 is too big of a price. He's still a good 3 to 5 set player, so I think that there is some value inherently with this price. Moving on to the other options, I'm going to go with 2 other long shots here. I'm going to go with Humbert at 21-1. For this one, kind of a similar story. I like his overall talent on hard court. I think his draw is pretty favorable too. Has Gigante, a qualifier in the first round, and either Bu or Habib in the second round, then Fees potentially in the third round. I know Fees did beat him in a title match last year. That was the only win he had against Humbert. Humbert was actually 3-1 lifetime against Fees, so I do like the head-to-head advantage there. Then maybe a matchup against Zverev, who could be injured at this point. Once again, I think Humbert's path is pretty good. And 21-1, I think it's a great price. This was on FanDuel, I believe, which also went rogue on the pricing. Most books at 14-1. FanDuel at 21-1. Sure, I think it's a great price for a guy that we saw have a great season last year. Best season of his career. He's been a good hardcore player, won a couple titles. I think 21-1 is a good price. And you know what? Maybe it's a case of nostalgia, or maybe it's just a great story. Give me Nishikori at 42-1 as my super long shot here in the section. I think it's a very big price. I understand the argument is fitness can be a concern for Nishikori, who's battled some injuries over the years, but I do think his path is okay. Montero in the first round was good in qualifying, but Nishikori made the final in an event a couple weeks ago. He's in good form, and I do think that his path is fine. Paul in the second round could be tricky, so I am aware of that, but Paul and Nishikori will have a massive rally battle behind the baseline, and Nishikori is one of the best fifth set players of all time. His record, actually, in fifth sets is remarkably good. So if the matchup against Paul turns into the marathon, I think it could be. Nishikori, historically speaking, does have an edge because he's a very, very good fifth set player. You have Tabilo, though, in his section as well. So once again, a pretty decent draw there. Then maybe Ruud in the later rounds. But I think 42-1 for a guy that I think can definitely make some noise, I think is a great price. Paul, I know he ended up losing on in the episode a couple days ago as he lost to Felix in 3. Paul, we know, is a rallier who's going to kind of fall apart in big matches. We've seen it over the years. I think Nishikori can make it interesting. That's all I'm saying. 42-1, though, is a great price. I'll put it this way. If you think that Paul and Nishikori is a potential war, Paul's around 9-1. Nishikori's 42-1. Like, there's a massive price difference here. I think too big. Give me the value on Nishikori, not just for that, but also it's kind of fun to root for Nishikori to make a comeback attempt, to make a deep run in Australia. 42-1, I like, though. But once again, a pretty, I'd say, open quarter if you are banking on these Zverev injury news, which I am. So I am going to go for, once again, some potential home run swings here for this quarter. So once again, the actual quarter picks here for Australia. First quarter, I'm going to go with Sinner, even though I'm not betting him at minus 275, but he's the obvious pick to win the quarter. Give me Kashanov at 30-1 as my long shot. For the second quarter, give me Chalk, give me Medvedev at 250, and give me Fritz at 3-1. For the third quarter, Chalk again, give me Alcaraz at 110, and give me Joker at 180. And for the fourth quarter, I'm going to go with absolute Armageddon. Give me Rude at 16-1. Give me Umber at 21-1. And give me Nishikori at 42-1 for the outrights of the actual event. So once again, I'm not going to be taking all of the guys that I picked to win the quarter, but I am going to take a couple to win the event. For the odds here, Sinner is plus 110. You have Alcaraz at 350. You have Djokovic at 6-1. You have Zverev at 10-1. Medvedev 16-1. Fritz at 30-1. You have de Minaur at 50-1. Draper at 60-1. Perricard at 70-1. Tsitsipas at 80-1. You have Rune at 80-1. Fonseca at 80-1. Which is conceptually an insane price. I understand that he just won the next-gen finals. I get that he's the up-and-comer, a potential future top 10 guy in the world. You have Rublev in the first round, and you're like one of the shortlist favorites to win the event. I think that's insane to me. In fact, I really don't get the pricing at all, because according to DraftKings, Fonseca has better odds, or I should say lower odds, to win the event compared to Rublev. Rublev's favored in the first round, so I don't understand these odds at all. Fonseca has a cheaper price to win it all at 80-1 compared to Rublev at 120-1, and he's a dog to Rublev in the first round. That makes absolutely no sense. Separate point. I was not going to take Rublev anyway, or Fonseca anyway, but that price does not make any sense at all, and if you're taking Fonseca, you need at least, in my opinion, 150-1. You need a massive price on Fonseca. Anyway, point is for the actual outrights, once again, I kind of went through the main names here. You've rooted 100-1. Sheldon, I'm not going to bother. It should be one of the main guys. You're looking at the overall, I'd say, options for me. I would not go anywhere past Medvedev personally. Maybe Fritz at 30-1. I don't think de Minaur would beat Sinner. I mean, I don't think Fritz would beat Sinner either, because Sinner is an absolute wagon right now, and he beat Fritz in straight sets in the U.S. Open final, and he beat him in straight sets twice in the ATP finals at the end of last year. So the point is, I think that Sinner is probably going to win. He's too good right now. He's the best player in hard court by a mile, and I feel like because of that, I have to take him. I found plus 125. I know it's pure chalk. I get it's disgusting, and I'm sure you were hoping for some cases for longer shots about 27 minutes into this episode for the Australian Open preview, but unfortunately, I can't do it. Sinner is an absolute machine. He barely lost at all last year on hard court, and he had a massive winning streak to end the season. I can't go against him. He's too good, and I do think beating him 2 out of 3 is almost impossible on hard court. 3 to 5 is just a waste of time. I'll go with Sinner. I think, once again, he should win the event, so I'll take him to win it at 125. And for the second pick, I am going to go with Alcaraz, the last guy to beat Sinner on hard court, actually. Point is, though, Alcaraz at 360, I do like the price. Think that it's going to be tough for him to get past Joker and Sinner. The issue, though, is that you have to think of how many guys conceptually can beat Sinner in a hypothetical 3 out of 5. Alcaraz, I think, can do it. He's beaten Sinner on hard court before. He's been good in Grand Slams against Sinner before. I think that Alcaraz can get the job done in theory if there's a potential matchup there. So I am going to go with him at 360. Now, that does open up a bit of a discussion here. Am I taking Djokovic too? The answer is no. The reason why I'm taking Alcaraz is because if Sinner gets hurt, or if maybe he has an off day, I can see Alcaraz beating him in a potential 3 out of 5. I'm at the point in Joker's career where I cannot visualize Joker beating Sinner on hard court. Sinner has smacked the crap out of Joker for the last year or so, and Joker hasn't even been close in any of these matchups, whether it was in the Wimbledon or whether it was in, once again, the hard court swing. I don't think Joker can beat Sinner at this point. I love Joker. He's my favorite player, but I do think at some point you have to come to terms with reality. Joker is still an all-time great player, but Sinner has surpassed him by a wide margin on hard court. I can't take Joker. I don't think he would beat Alcaraz and Sinner in the same event. He has not won a title on the ATP Tour in over a year. 6-1 is too cheap for me. I can't take it. I don't see any value on Joker at around 6-1. I think it's going to be a chalk event. It's tough for me to go against Sinner once again, but if there's one guy who can pull off the upset, I think it is Alcaraz, so I'll take him as my other option. That's honestly it. I know that you were hoping for one long shot throw-in maybe like a case for Medvedev at 16-1, because he has beaten Sinner too in the past, beat him in the Wimbledon last year. Sinner did beat him though in the U.S. Open last year. Point is, though, I went complete chalk for the actual outrights to win the event. I think it's pretty straightforward. It usually is in Australia. Once again, the recent winners here, Sinner, Djokovic, Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, Djokovic. Really not an event with a lot of long shot winners in the past. Usually one of the 2 or 3 favorites pre-tournament wins the whole thing. I'll take the same approach. Give me Sinner at 125 and give me Alcaraz at 360 as my only 2 picks for the outrights to win the event here in Australia. I see Bill stopping by. Thanks for once again stopping by the show. Hopefully you enjoy the content. Yes, plays have been good so far. Can't complain. And a shout out to Peter, who's coming through too. Welcome. Hopefully you do enjoy the content. Anyway, point is, though, time to get into the actual lock and dog picks for the first round matches. But before that, though, wanted to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Onyx Fantasy because they have a lot of great items in their pick menu. They have a lot of easy ways to make money, by the way, with Profit Boost and Gimme Pick'ems. Underdog Best Ball is available for the playoffs. Playoff Best Ball is now live. Gauntlet Tournament has $2 million in prize up for grabs. Just a $25 entry. NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. Tennis included for potential options for your entries. They also have esports, if you actually care about that. Point is, they can also use specials and boosts on reflex entries. For my entry, though, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson, higher half interception in this game. He had 1 pick in both regular season games against Baltimore. Ravens have had at least 1 interception in 4 straight. I think it's a good overall spot for Wilson to make 1 really bad throw for interception in this game, and I'll use the higher half a pick for my entry. Reminder, though, when you do sign up for your new account, use the promo code SGPN to claim a special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to 1K bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Just finished going through the outrights, quarters, and overall tournament winning outrights for the event. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. So for the lock, I actually am going to go to a matchup involving Kyrgios. He takes on Fernley. Fernley, you might remember, actually, being a pretty solid challenger player over the last couple of months. And he actually faced off against Djokovic in Wimbledon last year, won a set against Joker. So he's definitely had some tough matchups before in Grand Slams, and he actually looked pretty good against Joker. So I don't expect nerves to play a factor here, but I am going to go with Fernley plus the 2.5 games here at minus 140. Now, I know the first thought on most people's minds, I'm going to fade Kyrgios in Australia. Are you out of your mind? No, I'm not. I got to add context to it. Kyrgios, first of all, is injured. He's facing an abdomen injury, which has definitely caused him to, I'd say, limit his overall practice entering the event. He was supposed to have an exhibition match against Djokovic and unfortunately had to cancel because of the abdomen injury. Now, it's a grade 1 abdomen strain. I looked it up. I did the medical research here. Grade 1 strains usually take 2 to 4 weeks to heal. Kyrgios played a doubles match with Djokovic on January 1st, so he is coming back prematurely with the abdomen injury. So once again, he's definitely not 100%. And on top of that, he's barely played any tennis over the last couple of years. So Kyrgios has played 3 sets of ATP tennis since June of 2023. Lost a 3-setter to Pericard in his first match back. Point is, he is very, I'd say, potentially compromised here with the injury. He's also potentially rusty because he's barely played in the last year and a half. I think Kyrgios being a favorite in this matchup is actually debatable because of the injury concerns and because of the lack of proper reps on courts in actual tournaments. If you've only played 3 sets in about a year and a half in singles on ATP level, and you're supposed to go 5 sets in a potential marathon, good luck to you. I question the fitness here. I do think that, once again, Kyrgios is compromised, and Fernley has been good lately. He's won 4 of his last 5 matches. The one exception was a loss to Fonseca, who's been unbelievable for the last couple of weeks. I think Fernley is a dangerous player here. I think he's a solid player as well. And he also faced Joker, I said before, in Wimbledon. So I do think that he's not going to be overwhelmed by the overall, I'd say, stage, facing Kyrgios in Australia in front of that crowd. It's mostly fading Kyrgios, though. I think that it's based on reputation here. Yes, he did hold serve every time against Pericard, who's not a good returner. But either way, point is, Kyrgios, I think when healthy, would win this matchup. He's not healthy, and he's barely played in the last year and a half. So I think that, once again, the wrong guy might be favored. Don't mind Fernley to win the match potentially, but 2.5 games I think is a good price at minus 140. Think you can win it outright, and Kyrgios maybe runs out of stamina if it gets into a fourth or a fifth, and he mentally breaks down or physically breaks down, which could result in a lopsided set potentially for this one. The question is, though, would Kyrgios potentially withdraw with injury mid-match? Would he retire in front of the fans in Australia? I don't know, because he came back from retirement. You could argue that this might be his last Australian Open if he decides to retire again. Probably not. I think he's going to stick around, but in theory, it could be his last time playing in the Australian Open. Do I think he would leave via retirement? I don't. I think he'd give the fans a show. If he was completely compromised, he might end up trying to deal with it and trying to just lose but finish the match, give a post-match, interview, etc. But I'll go with Fernley, plus 2.5 here. I'll fade an injured Kyrgios who's barely played. Think the odds are very disrespectful in favor of, it's a Fernley. Think he's very live to win it. So I'll go with him plus the games here as my lock. For my dog, I am going to go with a combo play. I'm going to go with the Nishioka match, and I am going to go with him to win and both players to win a set at plus 142. Nishioka takes on Dugas, and he is a massive favorite. Nishioka is minus 580. However, he has not been involved in a lot of straightforward matches lately because 3 of his last 4 matches have not ended in straight sets. So Nishioka does tend to win, does drop some sets though, did lose to Kokkinakis in 3 in his last matchup. So point is, Nishioka should win based on his price of minus 580, but I can get 580 as a favorite at plus 142 by adding him to drop a set, which is done quite frequently over the last couple of weeks. Dugas, though, went through qualifying. He is a deciding set machine because he has gone 5 straight matches without any of them ending in straight sets. 5 straight matches, not ending in straight sets. And once again, he's a massive dog. He needs to win 1 set. I think it's a realistic expectation for him. Nishioka, not a great server. I can see Dugas, who's a pretty tall guy, decent server. I think he can win a set in this one. I'm not saying he's going to win the match, but if you want to find value for a minus 580 favorite, and I can save about $7 just by shopping around, I'll get plus 142. It's on FanDuel. I like it. I think it was plus 129 on Caesars by shopping around, but I like the price here for a guy that I think is the better player, but once again, maybe a guy who is not accustomed to winning in dominant fashion. I see a competitive matchup here that I think Nishioka does win. I'll go with him to win this one in 4 or 5 at what I think is a very good price. So once again, the plays here for the first round here in the Australian Open on the men's side, lock's going to be on Fernley plus 2.5 games, not sets, at minus 140. For my dog, I am going to go with Nishioka to win the match and both players to win a set at plus 142. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. Reminder back once again in a couple minutes, actually, for the women's Australian Open. We're going to have a bonus lock and dog pick for that episode, too. We have quarters as well. So once again, if you do want some more outrights, I have you covered. Spoiler, there will be a lot more long shots into the women's episode than the men's for the outright, so keep that in mind. But if you want an extra episode, you don't have to wait too long. Going to have another episode in a couple of minutes. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio, find me on the NBA show, find me on the MLB show as well. And until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.